I'm 91 years old. My name is Arthur Bennett. For 47 years, I was a professor of psychology. I studied human behavior for a living. I published papers on happiness, on meaning, on what makes a life feel whole. My students called me brilliant. My colleagues called me accomplished. My university gave me awards I still have in a box somewhere. And I am here to tell you that I understood almost nothing. There is a kind of person you probably know. Maybe you work with them. Maybe you are them. They wake up early, work late, hit every goal, earn every title. From the outside, their life looks exactly like success is supposed to look. But somewhere behind the eyes, something is missing. Something they can't quite name. Something they stopped looking for so long ago, they forgot it was ever there. Psychologists have a term for the gap between the life you're performing and the life you're actually living. I wrote about it for decades. I taught it to hundreds of students. I explained it clearly, confidently, from the front of a lecture hall. I never once applied it to myself. Last winter, I was sitting alone in my study. It was quiet the way old houses get quiet, heavy, like the silence has weight. I was looking at a shelf of awards, framed certificates, plaques, a small trophy from a conference in 1987. I could tell you the year I received each one. I could tell you what I said in each acceptance speech. Every detail perfectly preserved. Then I thought about Eleanor, my wife. 44 years of marriage. She passed 4 years ago, and I tried to remember the last real conversation we had. Not logistics, not schedules, not what needed to be fixed or paid or arranged. A real conversation where we talked about something that mattered, where I was actually present with her. I couldn't remember it. I sat there for a long time with that. A man who spent his entire career teaching people how to live, sitting alone at 91, realizing he had remembered every award and forgotten his wife. If you are busy right now, if your calendar is full and your life looks successful and something still feels quietly wrong, I need you to stay with me, because I know exactly what that is, and I know exactly how it happens. I did not set out to become someone who is absent from his own life. Nobody does. It happens slowly, quietly, one small compromise at a time. When I was 34, I missed my daughter Claire's school play because of a faculty meeting. I told myself I'd make it up to her. When I was 41, I skipped a family holiday because a paper I was writing was due. I told myself it was temporary. When I was 55, my son James stopped calling as often. I noticed, briefly, and then I went back to work. Each time, I had a reason, a good one. The kind that sounds completely reasonable when you say it out loud. The kind that lets you sleep at night. I built my career the way a man builds a wall. Brick by brick, year by year, until it was tall and solid and impressive. And somewhere in the building, I stopped noticing that the wall had become a barrier between me and Eleanor, between me and my children, between me and anything that couldn't be measured or published or awarded. I told myself I was doing it for them, that the security, the reputation, the money, that was love. That was how I showed up. I believed that completely, until I couldn't remember the last real conversation with my wife. I was not unusual. That is the most uncomfortable truth I can offer you. I watched the same pattern in the men around me my entire career. 2 of them I still think about. The first was a colleague named Robert. Brilliant man. Published more papers than anyone in our department. He had a photograph on his desk of his 2 sons, taken when they were maybe 7 and 9 years old. I sat in his office hundreds of times over 30 years. The photograph never changed. Same photo. Same boys frozen at 7 and 9, while the real ones grew up, moved away, stopped visiting. Robert retired at 68, healthy, financially comfortable, professionally respected. I asked him once, maybe a year after retirement, how he was finding it. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Arthur, I keep waiting to feel like I've arrived somewhere, like all of it meant something. But it just feels like I stopped." He died 14 months later. Heart attack. Sudden. At his funeral, his sons gave the eulogy. They talked about his work, his publications, his contributions to the field. They were kind. They were respectful. But I sat in that church and thought, they didn't really know him, and he didn't really know them. And now neither of them ever would. The second was a student named David. This was maybe 20 years ago. David was exceptional. Sharp, ambitious, the kind of student who reminds you why you teach. He came to my office one afternoon looking unusually still. He said, "Professor Bennett, I got the job. The one in New York. The one I've been working toward for 3 years." I said, "That's wonderful, David. You should be proud." He nodded. Then he said, "My girlfriend said if I take it, she's not coming with me. She says I've already been gone for 3 years, even when I was sitting right next to her." He paused. "I think she's right." I told him to take the job. I told him opportunities like that don't come twice. I told him relationships can survive distance if they're strong enough. He took the job. I heard from him once, maybe 5 years later. He was successful. He was alone. He said he thought about what I told him often. I've thought about what I told him often too, and I am not proud of it. The night I sat with those awards, I did not cry. I want to be honest about that. I am 91 years old, and I have learned that some realizations are too large for tears. They just sit inside you, heavy and still, like stones settling at the bottom of a river. I thought about Eleanor, the way she used to read in the evenings, curled in the chair by the window, the way she'd look up when I finally came to bed and say, "Long day?" And I'd say, "Yes," and she'd nod and go back to her book. Every night for years. That small exchange, that quiet patience of hers. I used to think her patience meant she was fine, that she understood, that she accepted the way things were. I wonder now if it meant something else entirely. If she had stopped asking for more because she had learned I wouldn't have it to give. If that patience was not peace, but resignation. I will never know. That is the part one have to live with. I sat in my study for 2 hours that night, not moving, just sitting with the question of how a man who dedicated his life to understanding the human mind could have missed the most important human being in his own home. And then I picked up the phone and called my son James. It rang 4 times. He answered, surprised. "Dad, is everything okay?" "Everything is fine," I said. "I just wanted to talk." There was a pause. The kind of pause that tells you everything about how long it had been. "Okay," he said quietly. "I'm here." We talked for an hour and a half. About nothing important. About his work, his children, a trip he was planning. Small things, but I was present for every word. I was not thinking about what I needed to do next. I was not half somewhere else. It was the most connected I had felt in years. And it cost me nothing. It cost me 1 phone call, which meant every year I hadn't made, it had cost me something I couldn't calculate. Here is what I know after 91 years and a lifetime of studying people. Most men who secretly hate their lives are not unhappy because they failed. They are unhappy because they succeeded at the wrong things, and now they don't know how to say that out loud. We are taught very early that a man's value lives in what he produces, his title, his income, his achievements. And so we produce, relentlessly. We optimize our careers and neglect our kitchens. We answer emails and miss bedtimes. We become very, very good, at the thing that was never going to make us whole. And the cruelest part is this: it works for a while. It works. The achievement feels like enough. The momentum feels like meaning. You can go years, decades, without stopping long enough to feel what is missing. But it accumulates, quietly, invisibly, the way debt does when you're not checking the balance. And one day you sit in a quiet room and you feel the full weight of it, and you realize you have been busy your entire life, and you cannot remember the last time you felt truly, simply alive. I wrote about this for decades. I have a book where I wrote all of it down, everything I observed, everything I should have applied to myself sooner, the patterns I saw in hundreds of people and finally recognized in my own reflection. My son James keeps asking me to take it down, says it's too raw, says people will think I'm bitter, says it makes the family uncomfortable. But men are reading it. Men who are 54 and sitting in their cars after work, not wanting to go inside. Men who are 67 and realizing their children are polite strangers. Men who are 71 and understanding for the first time what their wives were trying to tell them for 30 years. So it stays, at least for now, because the thing nobody tells you is this: awareness is not the same as being too late. I am 91 years old. I have more past than future. I understand that clearly and without self-pity. But I want to tell you something that took me 9 decades to understand. Something I wish someone had sat me down and said when I was 45 and moving too fast to feel anything. Success is not the enemy. Ambition is not the enemy. Working hard is not the enemy. Unconsciousness is the enemy. Living your entire life on the surface of yourself. Performing productivity while something deeper goes unattended. Filling every hour with movement so you never have to sit still long enough to ask whether any of it is actually making you happy. That is what steals a life. Not failure, unconsciousness. I have watched brilliant men disappear into their own achievements. Men who could analyze anyone's psychology except their own. Men who gave their best hours to institutions that replaced them within a year of retirement and gave their leftover hours to the people who would have loved them forever. Men who died with full resumes and empty relationships and a quiet confusion about why none of it felt like enough. I was one of those men. I am telling you this not to make you feel hopeless, but because I believe you still have time to make a different choice, not a dramatic choice. Not quitting your job or selling your house or making some grand gesture that makes a good story but changes nothing underneath. A small choice. Today, call the person you've been meaning to call. Have the conversation you've been postponing because the work felt more urgent. Sit at the dinner table tonight without your phone. Ask your child something real. Tell your partner something true. Not because life is short, you already know life is short, but because presence is a skill. And like every skill, it gets weaker the longer you go without using it. And one day you will want it desperately, and you will reach for it, and it will not be there. The people will still be there, perhaps, but the time will not. The version of them that needed, you will have already learned to need someone else, or to need no one at all. I am 91. I live with my memories and my regrets and my phone calls with James, which are longer now than they have ever been. I am not telling you I fixed everything. I am telling you I started. Late, but I started. And I am telling you that you do not have to wait until you are sitting alone in a quiet room at 91 with a shelf of awards and a question you cannot answer. You can start now, today, while there is still someone on the other side waiting to pick up. Thank you for sitting with me, for letting an old man tell you the truth he spent a lifetime avoiding. I'll be here, still learning, still showing up, still grateful someone is listening. Take care of yourself, whatever that means to you.